Karen Connelly, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion with Wade Davis and John Vaillant. It is a discussion about the role of the writer in a world that is changing very quickly, that is threatened by various environmental problems, by climate change, and also by changes culturally in all kinds of different places on this planet.
Really happy to be out here, partly because I really admire Wade Davis, and he's really one of my inspirations for what I do, the type of writing I do, and the things I care about.
I'm thrilled to be here with John, who's a good friend of mine, and it's both for a wonderful cause, but also it's a terrific opportunity for us to get together and dialogue, because our work has been so complementary over the years, and I'm just really looking forward to learning what he's got to say.
Now, some of you may have seen Tom Friedman's provocative column in yesterday's New York Times. He wrote in this column that 4 words in the English language will soon, he says, be dropped from the dictionary. And those words are privacy, local, average, and later. And I want to talk a little bit very briefly about what he says about the word later. So whatever you're planning to save, please save it now, because later is when they'll be gone. Later will be too late. Later is over. So the question, the very broad, general question that we're asking this evening, I think, is what is the writer's role in a world that is changing so fast? In a world where later is too late?
I think of myself as, whatever I'm doing is a metaphor, the lens through which I see the world. Like at one point I was a logger. At one point I was a hunting guide. At one point I was a park ranger. At one point I was a filmmaker. At one point I was a father. I kind of, just whatever I'm doing becomes what I try to focus on. And I just like to write.
Well, I do think of myself as a writer, and that was brewing for a long time. But what to write about is an entirely different question, and there are two moments that I think might be useful here. One is my dream. I grew up in Cambridge in a very rarefied environment and really wanted to be far away from that, so I hitchhiked to Alaska, and I worked out on the west coast of Alaska in a place where the frontier mentality was still very much alive. And the feeling was, if you were a white guy from outside, that if you dragged yourself there, you were entitled to whatever you could get out of the ground, out of the water, out of the forest. And I participated in that. And I was 22 years old, and it felt perfectly right and even righteous to do that. And needless to say, I got some more perspective on that and thought about it, and other things happened to me. And as I found my way into 15 years later or 12 years later writing The Golden Spruce, I realized I was standing too close to that story to see it.
Well, it's like what Hemingway said, the main credential for a writer is to have something important to say that the world needs to hear.
Mm-hmm.
At home, I have a tiny little rotation that I do between my kids' school and my refrigerator and my desk, and with a little bit of time spent in bed, and that's, or probably a lot of time. And so, you can get a very skewed perspective on the world that way. I mean, a perfectly natural and honest one. It's true, these things that I'm doing, but there's so much more out there. And we are living at a time in history where the world is shrinking metaphorically. And I mean, the other thing that as a kind of a counterpoint to what Wade was saying, another reason to sort of step back is there are incredible things, incredibly positive things happening in the world right now that give me enormous hope.
I was going to say, I sort of say I'm not a writer, I'm a scientist, but what I mean by that really is that I think that one of the biggest failings is from the realm of science, because how can you expect people to care about these issues if they haven't been scientifically informed? And scientists tend to be very reluctant to speak in the public sphere, and there's, there can even be a prohibition against doing it, and yet the wonder of,
Increasingly.
yeah, I mean a literal one in that case, but I mean, if we don't share the lessons of science, how can we expect people to care about these phenomena? And that's why I think it's just absolutely essential that those who are in the academic world are encouraged to share their wisdom with the world at large. And the world of nature is so much more beautiful than anything we can imagine. I remember when that horrible book, The Secret Life of Plants, came out. Did anyone you remember that book? It said that plants like Mozart. Do you remember that? Isn't that ridiculous? And a friend of mine, I was traveling, taking a lot of drugs in Colombia, and we were studying drugs. We were legal. A friend of mine he was a great poet and a great botanist, and he hated that book, and he'd say, why would a plant give a shit about Mozart? And he said, and even if it did, why should that impress us? They can eat light. Isn't that enough?
Yeah.